Hi, welcome to a short video on supporting this document, how to install warehouse labelling on racking and shelving. To start with, it's helpful to have the labels laid out so you know where they all are, the different designs that I think you probably have. Same for the sign, so where your aisle markers go in, etc., and have all those laid out, and familiarise yourself with any drawing or plan that you might have so you know where they're all going to be installed. From a more practical point of view, you now need a measuring stick, ideally just shorter than the beam or shelf size that you're installing the labels onto. Some means of marking it, either a Sharpie or a biro are normally fine for that. A rag to clean the beam surface or the shelf edge itself. And if you're installing your aisle markers with tech screws, you'll need a cordless drill driver. At this point, we'd recommend making sure you're well planned. So we'd spread the labels out, make sure we get them into aisle order as best we can, get a good handle on getting them in the right order, cross-referencing drawings, and then go and have a look at the racking and the shelving to make sure you understand where they're all going to be installed. The next thing to do is to get clear on whereabouts you're going to install the labels on the specific shelf or beam. There are a number of ways of doing this from a racking point of view, and they are documented in the guidance document that you can get a copy of, or you'll have a copy of. A couple of ways of doing it from a racking point of view, either under the pallet or towards the end of the frames. If you're an installer and you're installing these on behalf of the client, it's worth getting the client involved at this point. But also, if you're the end user, you've got any other stakeholders to get involved, make sure you get some agreement. They're quite difficult to fix after the event or change after the event. Once you've agreed where the labels are going to be installed, now you've got to sort of start working out the measurements needed to use your measuring stick or your template stick. So take some time here to make sure you work out where you need to install them, get the measurements written down, because the next thing you need to do is mark out the measuring stick you're going to use or the template stick you're going to use. Now you've worked out your measurements, you need to mark the stick up. Now, if you've got beams that don't have anything on, you can rest the stick on top of the beam. If you've got pallets on the beams, because the facility is already in use, you might need to get some magnets, so you can put magnets on the stick so you can stick the stick on the underneath of the beam. Because you're going to need both hands free to actually install labels. And I always advocate that you push the stick to the left-hand side of the bay, so it doesn't matter which orientation you're in, whether you're looking at let's say the east wall or the west wall, depending on the orientation of the building. As long as you're looking forwards and you put the stick on the beam and push it to the left, that'll be consistent. Then at the end of the job, when you look down the racking, all the labels will be lined up. So now you can mark on the stick where the labels are going to be. Normally we sort of block out and use a very defined mark and mark the stick all the way around. You don't want to be stopping if you manage to put the stick on the wrong way around. And then you're good to go. You've got a stick measured properly. You know where it's going to be installed. You know that the labels are always going to be installed in the right place. You're ready to start installing. Now, before you install any labels onto any shelving or racking, it's just best to be sure that there isn't any surface dust kicking around. So get your cloth or your rag and just move it across the beam to make sure all of that surface dust is removed. The greater the surface contact we can get between the adhesive and the beam, the better the adhesive is going to work. You will also notice in the document that we're happy for you to tab labels out, or what we call tab labels out on the scissor lift, or possibly even the shelf or the beam itself. This is perfectly fine. There's no issue with it at all. Tabbing out helps speed up the installation, so it reduces the amount of time and motion required. So tabbing out, again, as shown in the document, perfectly fine to do. Right, now you can get on and get some installation done. A couple of little things to point out here. If your beam is, let's say, 80 or 90 millimeters and you've got a 60 millimeter label, it's probably worth considering whether you're going to put the label towards the top of the beam, in the middle, or towards the bottom, so it's consistent. Particularly if there's two of you working on a platform alongside each other, make sure you get that consistent. You've agreed where you're going to do the installation from there. And be sure when you install the label that you cover all of it and you cover the corners. Occasionally, People have a tendency to maybe use the flat of the hand, or they miss a corner. What happens there is after a period of time, that corner won't stick. So you've got to make sure you cover the whole of the label with your hands to make sure it's applied to the beam okay. We would always advocate doing the first bay first, be it shelving or racking. Get a bay done, stand back. Is that what you want it to look like at the end? Get some support from some stakeholders or a customer, get somebody to sign it off if that's a situation you're in. But take some time at the beginning. Errors are very difficult to undo, quite costly to do, waste a lot of time. So get the first bay done and get it checked off. Right, just a couple of points now outside of the document. I'm going to give you some tips from some experience. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to talk through some of the mistakes that I've made and the team have made, and I know customers have made over the years. We'll cover those off now. Right, occasionally people manage to label the wrong aisle with the wrong reference number. And one way to minimise that is actually to put the aisle markers up first. And then you can reference the aisle to the aisle markers as you go down. So a tip I would do, if you've got any signage to do, any aisle marker signs, get those installed first, make sure they're okay, and then cross-reference the labelling to the aisle that you're going to work in. Second thing that occasionally happens is as you're working down an aisle, you'll miss a bay out. I know, very frustrating. So every few bays, have a look back down the aisle. Have you missed anything off? If you catch it early enough, it's not too much of a problem, but there's nothing worse than getting to the end of an aisle and you've got a set of labels left over because you've missed an aisle or you've missed a bay way down the racking. Sometimes when structures are installed, we have a thing called a half bay, which is rather than putting two pallets on maybe a 2.7 clear entry beam, there's a 1350 at the end. And the racking company saves some steel, they save you some cost, they make the beam narrower. If that's the case, contact the office and we'll happily remake those labels for you a different size for free and get them out to you. Don't worry about it. If the label does fit, you can trim it with some scissors or a trimmer, and you can get them to install. If it's a split base label, feel free to cut it in half, absolutely fine. And one final thing to be aware of, occasionally, within a batch of beams, there's a beam that's a bit rougher than the others. If you get a particularly rough beam, you won't get a lot of surface contact from the adhesive to the beam. If that's the case, please let us know. We will remake that label with a much thicker adhesive on for you. And again, as long as there's only a handful, we'll do that free of charge. So you should now have enough knowledge to have a fairly good crack at labelling the racking yourself. Or if you're an installer, again, a good template and a framework to work from. Any issues, please contact the office. Again, we're here to help. Any problems, give us a shout.